Hello, FlossTube, and welcome back to Fairy Tales and French Knots. I'm Erin, and this is my channel about cross-stitch, where I talk long enough to make my family wonder what I'm up to, but short enough that you can watch me on your lunch break. So, first of all, speaking of my family, they don't wonder what I'm up to right now because my husband and daughter are working on a community theater production right now. So I may talk a little bit longer than your lunch break. And if I do that, I apologize now. But I've been doing a lot of stitching, did some traveling with my daughter, and just had some fun things going on in my life. So I might talk, like I said, a little bit longer. But we'll start with stitching and I'll try to stay on topic. It is hard when I'm talking to myself, really, although if you're anything like me, when you watch floss tubes, you're like yelling things back at people all the time and no, that's not who that designer is, and I have that too, and all that. So I hear you, really, I do, because I do it too. But I thought I'd start with what I've been working on because, like I said, I've had quite a bit of stitching time lately. And first is the Three Maids a Sailing. And there is what I have so far. Right now I've got, most of the bigger quilt sail finished. And over on the other side, you can see over here is the book that this girl who sits in this front boat is holding. So that gives you an idea of how long that first boat is. And that is the sail for the second boat, obviously kind of in the mid-ground of the piece. So there's my progress on that. And the book that is from, I actually do have it with me today. It is Quilt Designs in Cross Stitch by the Vanessa Ann Collection, an American Sampler, 1989. So if you're ever looking for that pattern, this is the book that it's in. There are some other interesting patterns in here. Again, some are very dated, but the other one I liked, and actually one of my coworkers has challenged me to stitch. It is this one called A Shooting Star. I may have shown that off before. If I did, oh well. So there's that. I was working on Primitive Hare's Sleepy Hollow. I almost said Sleeping Beauty, but it's Sleepy Hollow from the Primitive Hare, and I got this out for Dark 13 stitching in July and stitched on it for a week or two. Kind of got in the groove. So here is Sleepy Hollow. And you can see I got some of the red done on the tree and a little bit more of Katrina Van Tassel over here. So that's coming along. And this frame was actually on the freebie pile at StitchCon. So thank you, StitchCon, for providing yet another reason for me to finish things. Or at the very least, leave them, kitted up to a point that I will eventually get sick of looking at it on that scroll frame and tell myself I have to finish it. So there's that. And then my daughter and I took a road trip, and it's kind of become our mother-daughter summer vacation tradition. We plan a road trip, and the rules of our road trips are as follows. We try not to drive on the same road twice. So wherever we go, we make a loop to come home. Then we set the days up in like 5 to 6 hours of driving. So if you drove from point A to point B with no stops in between, you could do it in 5 or 6 hours. But what we do is we watch for roadside attraction, at this exit, come visit something kinds of signs. And my daughter will have her phone and will pick, ask Google, what can I do on this route, and pick things for us to do. And, some days are better than others, but our trip this time, day one, we went from home to Morgantown, West Virginia. We didn't do a whole lot on that part of that leg of the journey. We were driving on 2-lane roads through kind of the wilds of Pennsylvania, and not a whole lot to stop and see or do. We got grilled cheese sandwiches at Dunkin' Donuts for lunch. That's, kind of the extent of the excitement there. We always take a cooler with sandwich fixings and fruit and snacks and all that too, because you can't road trip if you don't look like a 9-year-old let loose in a convenience store with $100 bill is in the backseat of your car. Got to have M&Ms and Pringles and Cheetos, and we honestly did pretty well. We didn't eat a lot of that junk, but anyway, yeah. So got to Morgantown, hung out in the hotel, went to the pool, had a good time, and then the next day we drove from Morgantown, West Virginia to Bardstown, Kentucky, and on the drive from Morgantown to Bardstown, my daughter saw a sign on the highway that said, at this exit, Monster Museum. Why would you not stop at a monster museum? How awesome is that? And we're thinking it's going to be like, various movie monsters maybe, or somebody's collection of, I don't know, Bigfoot and Frankenstein and, Godzilla or something. No, that is not what this was. This was the Flatwoods Monster Museum. And the Flatwoods Monster, if you're into cryptids, maybe you know who the Flatwoods Monster is. Neither of us are that into that whole scene, so we didn't know what this was. Evidently, in 1952, a woman in the hills of rural West Virginia saw a shooting light across the sky. And when she went to investigate, she found a large creature with glowing eyes in a red pointed hood with a green cape or body or whatever. And this legend has stuck around. The JCs, which is a community organization for those of you who aren't U.S. folks, the JCs in that area in the 60s started selling little lanterns of the Flatwoods Monster, also known as Braxy, I believe. And they have a festival and this little museum, which is this little hole in the wall in this little hole in the wall town, is completely full of all kinds of little tchotchkes and town events that they've had, just all kinds of things. And I think my favorite thing was the journal article written entirely in Swedish. I was like, really? This is a thing? But it was a riot. We had the best time. So after the Monster Museum, how can anything live up to the Monster Museum? But anyway, after the Monster Museum, we drove on to, like I said, to Bardstown, Kentucky. And just before we got to Bardstown, we went through another town called, I think it was Mount Sterling. And there was a sign for a candy factory. And we went, candy factory? Monster Museum? Candy factory? We are so there. And the candy factory was the Ruth Hunt Candies. If you're, again, from Kentucky, you probably know what this is, but we're not, and we had no clue that Ruth Hunt Candies are a pulled candy, kind of like a taffy, but they're made with butter, cream, vanilla, and sugar, and after they get hard, they sit overnight, and then they get this consistency, kind of like those pink and yellow and green, my mom always called them butter mints, that you'd have after dinner that kind of like melt in your mouth but are sticky. Well, that's what this candy is like. So, of course, we bought some because we're in Kentucky and we're not going to get this stuff where we are. And the folks in the store said, this is as Kentucky as bourbon. well, I can't buy bourbon for my 13-year-old, but I can buy her candy. So I bought that. And then we got to Bardstown. And while we were in Bardstown, our plan was to visit the Bernheim Forest Center, which is a nature preserve and educational environment that has an installation of the Thomas Dombo giant trolls. And if you haven't heard about them, I'll link them below. Thomas Dombo trolls are, to me, they're amazing. I love them. And we started visiting them during COVID when we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. We didn't have a family vacation for 2 years. And then that was actually one of our first road trips, was my daughter and I drove to the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens and looked at the trolls there. And the really neat thing about these exhibits is you can't just like drive up to them, get out of your car, take a picture, and leave. There are always some kind of interactive element, some sort of hike and learning experience that goes with it. And it's a lot of fun, and they're just fascinating to see. So we went to, I believe it's called the Bernheim Forest Center, and we adventured around there for the afternoon. It was so hot. I will never live in the South. I can say y'all all day, but I'm not going to live in the South. So we saw the trolls there. We also sat and watched the turtles in the pond, and hiked through a swamp environment and the prairie environment, and then we had lunch in their cafe, which is made entirely, or a majority of their foods are made with things grown on the grounds in what they call their edible garden. So that was nice. Yeah, we had a good time. And then from Kentucky, we drove up into Ohio. Yes, I did stop at Keepsakes. Were you wondering? I did. I bought 1 or 2 patterns. My daughter was not as excited about Keepsakes. I tried to kind of entice her with mentions of, the shop cat, 310. Sadly, 310 hid from her. He was more interested in turkey from the shop workers and not really into strange and bored 13-year-olds. But yes, quick stop at Keepsakes. And then we went on to the Allfill Audubon Center in outside Dayton. And they also have trolls. So we saw more trolls, and we really liked that hike. That was a really nice hike through the forest. We also hunted for fairy houses there. And from there, we went to Springfield, Ohio, and spent the night there. Then drove from Springfield up through up around Columbus, or I'm sorry, up around Cleveland into Erie, Pennsylvania, where I lived for a couple of years. And then across the lower western part of New York to get home. So it was a very long road trip, and we had a lot of fun. And I took cross stitch with me because in addition to stopping at Keepsakes, we got to our hotel rooms by, dinner time. We'd go to the pool, we'd hang out, and then she would read and I would stitch, and we would watch either reruns of The Big Bang Theory or whatever was on Animal Planet. The last time we traveled together, we got really into the DEC officers who go investigate, like woodland crime and everything, and we always got a good laugh out of some of that. So anyway, I had with me, where is it? This little piece called Woodland Night by Manny Dodonna, and it's on 40 count fabric. So there is my little remembrance of our adventure together. And there is another little squirrel. Right now he's only got a nose. Most of it's finished. I think there's some more curly cues of water, a few more stars, and then it'll be done. Just a little guy. So he's almost finished. And that was my that's my whips for right now. I do have some stash to show off. So I mentioned that I was at Keepsakes, And I picked up one of the Prairie Schooler cards while I was there. I don't love it in these colors, but they had a finished model where you could see the colors had been swapped out for some overdyes that gave it a little bit warmer feel. I don't really like the stark red and green on that. I think variegateds would be better. So I have that. That's a little bit of stash. Let's see. I have from one of the stash unload groups. Where did it go? It's a little shepherd's bush kit called Fright Nights. I'll talk about it a lot, but I can't find it. That's not it. There it is. There it is. There's Fright Night. Just an itty bitty little guy. But he'll fit very nicely in my lunch bag. So grab that, and it's a full kit. It's got all the buttons and floss and fabric, so that'll come in handy. And then I've talked a lot about, or I haven't talked a lot about like subscription boxes and things like that, because I don't typically do subscription boxes. I don't like paying for something and not knowing that I can use it or that I'll like it. So I see people show their subscriptions on other videos, and I love the stuff you get, but I'm just not willing to take the risk of not liking what I get. And then I was on Etsy the other day, and I was somehow, I think I was looking for a certain color of floss, and I couldn't find it. I stumbled onto Night Stalker's Calling, and they have some of the most interesting floss colors. A lot of them are named after like 80s movies and things I love. And they have a subscription plan that you can pick, just 1 month. You're not committed for multiple months. And the theme for July was Kraken. And you can also get just the floss and just a piece of fabric and not get, any additional tchotchkes in a mystery box. Like, I think it's Black Needle that sends a whole bunch of things. And there I often think, I don't need another coffee mug. I don't want, little things. I just want the stitching things. So that's kind of what's kept me away from those kinds of boxes. But here, what am I going to do? Right? And the July theme being Kraken, the girl who loves Pirates of the Caribbean and mermaids and underwater everything. Yeah, I bought it. So the 3 flosses I got, let's start with those because they are lovely. The first one is this teal called Ocean Water. It's not as variegated as I think it should be, maybe. It's a beautiful color. I love it. It's kind of got I think it's 598 DMC feel to it. So there it is. Yeah, it just doesn't have as much variegation in it as I was expecting. Although, what was I expecting when it didn't tell me what color I was getting? So who knows? But the other one is called Midnight Zone. This one I love. Navy blues, dark blues like this just call to me every time. So this one is perfect for me. And it does have quite a bit of variegation in it, actually. And as our variegation is progressing in this little show and tell, the final floss I got was called Kraken. There it is. It is all kinds of green and blue and a little bit of gold mixed in there. It's just, it is all over the place. And honestly, I love it. I'm wondering if I have like a Ocean Quaker, and I think I do. I think I have an Ori TM freebie, and I was also thinking of the I think they're Darling and Whimsy Quirky Quakers. I think she has some aquatic themed ones. So yeah, I can actually see me using this, even with the big splotchy color stuff happening in it. So those were the flosses I got from Night Stalker's Calling. I also got some fabric, and the fabric, you had two options. You could get a neutral or a bright. And I picked neutral because I usually figure that's a safe bet for the kinds of things I stitch. The color is called Twilight Zone. And I have a fat quarter, I think. Maybe it's a fat eighth, not sure. No, it's a fat quarter. But it's a little too splotchy for me. I don't know. It's looking really orange, and it's not. It's more of a tan gray and blue gray together. So I was looking at it and I wasn't sure what I would do with it. So there's one side, there's the other. I was like, I just don't know. And then, still on Etsy, I was looking at my wish list, or my favorites, and I found that I had this one bookmarked from Mama Witch Cross Stitch. It's called We Are Fine. And the title just makes me laugh. Like, I just see these little characters being very snarky. Like, we're fine. We're fine. We are fine. It's the American Gothic couple as Pumpkinheads. And I love them for many reasons. Partly the looks on their faces crack me up. And like I said, we're fine. We're fine. How are you? We're fine. Anyway, and my husband is from Iowa, which is where the original American Gothics are supposed to be kind of staged at. So yeah, this, and then I'm looking at this going, well, that works. The oranges and the whites and the darks would all show up on that for the most part. So I may have found something to do with my fabric of the month from Night Stalker's Calling. I can't guarantee that I'll order every month from them, but I will keep an eye on them because I really like some of their stuff. So that was my stash acquisition there. I have some finishes which I'm going to use to introduce the rest of my newly acquired stash. My finishes are two pieces by Sharon Verbose of the Purple Thread. They're both called Shop Girl. The first one is Shop Girl, and the second one is Shop Girl Flowers. She released both of them, I think, for Celebration of Needlework. The first one I picked up in 2022, and then the second one, obviously, I got this year at Celebration. The first one was designed to be a scissor fob pincushion sort of thing, and the second one was a little needle book thing. I didn't want to do that with either of them because the first one I discovered I had a frame that was perfect for, and I put her in that, and then I wanted to do something similar with the second. So, first Shop Girl. Dun, 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 dun. There she is. The only change I made from the kit was I made her skirt, I think, 1 or 2 rows shorter so that she wouldn't be too tall for the frame. Everything was included, including the little wool tag and the heart charm. They were all in the kit. Like I said, the only thing I added was the frame. And the only other change I made, actually, I think I did her earrings in the yellow floss instead of pink, because I felt like between the hair bow and I did add the lips. There were no lips on the pattern. She had enough pink. So that's first Shop Girl. Second Shop Girl, also in my own little frame. There she is. Her changes I made, I added the flower in the center, and I added the cording around the edge of the box as kind of a little embellishment. The flowers are from the paper crafting section at probably Michael's. And I did take the ends of the bow on her hat and I tucked them down into the fabric. I don't think that was done on the kit, but I wanted it to give it a little more finished look. It did create a little lump on the back, but who's going to know? So there's shop girl number 2. And what working on these 2 did was it made me realize how much I like kind of quirky little girl patterns. And for whatever reason, Mary Gary started calling to me. And the Mary Gary patterns, if you haven't seen them before, they're from the mid-90s, possibly early 2000s. And the first one that I picked up, actually this one's from 1994, is called the Forget-Me-Not Sampler. I love forget-me-nots. They're one of my favorite little wildflowers to find growing in the yard or in the woods, wherever. And the Mary Gary patterns just kind of crack me up, partly because of their quirky little ladies. So here's the Forget-Me-Not one. And it does say Forget-Me-Not on her one side. And there's her little lady in the center with her crazy hair. Looks kind of like me in the morning some days. But that one's super cute. On 28 count, it's 8 1/4 by 3 1/2. So it would make a really cute little drum finish, which I enjoy doing. So I got that. And then in one of the stash unload groups, there were a series called Seasonal Mementos that Mary Gary put together. And these are the September, October, November, and December seasonal mementos. And so you've got the Golden Rule for September, the Little Witch for October, those absolutely goofy little turkeys for November, and Santa for December. Someone has actually stitched the Santa for me as part of an ornament exchange several years ago, so I technically have that one. But the Little Witch cracks me up, and those turkeys are just adorable. They look like little bowling balls with combs for tails. I love it. The other thing I like about the Mary Gary patterns is that there's this little running story of the this Northwoods sewing chapter, and I'm assuming it's a fictional story that goes with all the patterns. But I love them. So this one on Seasonal Mementos 1 says, at a past meeting of the Potter's Embroidery Club, Northwoods chapter, the members chose secret sisters for the following year. Each member picked a name of another member from a jar. They made things, cooked, sent notes, and did other kindnesses for their secret sisters. They all worked at keeping their identities unknown. At the annual Christmas party held at Ruth's home, all was revealed. This was always a gala event. Miss Mary Moss, instructress and practitioner of needle courtesy and founder of a sewing school in the Northwoods, delighted in cross-stitching mementos for her secret sister. So it's this whole running story of Miss Mary Moss and her stitching. So that's Seasonal Mementos 1. You don't think I stopped there, right? Because that's only September, October, November, December. I'm sure Miss Mary Moss, in her, her role as a secret sister, didn't just do 4 months. Seasonal Mementos 2. January, February, March, and April. I love the little April bunnies. They're so cute. He's carrying a little carrot. So cute. Seasonal Mementos 3, which would be May, June, July, and August. So I have the whole year of seasonal mementos. In May, you are as welcome as the flowers in May, is another one of her little girls. June is the house. July is those 2 tall and proud fellows. And then for August, you've got the dog days, as in the dog days of summer. So I think they're adorable. I love all of them. I don't know when I'll get to stitch them. Does that really, really matter, people? No. Okay, so, oh, and I have another one that I found on eBay. Should be arriving probably sometime this week, called Friends in the Garden, which, again, it's an alphabet sampler with 2 girls and another one of those bunnies. Just cute. So I've got that on the way. I got one other piece of fabric. I mentioned in my StitchCon recap that the dyer for Wonderland Fabrics had been giving out free samples. The only thing she had when I got to her table was Aida, and I don't stitch on Aida. I mean, I will if I need to, but I don't go out of my way looking for hand-dyed Aida. So I told her that, and she said, well, if you give me your address, I'll mail you some when I get some more dyed. And I went, okay. I certainly, it wasn't an expectation that I'd get anything. I mean, obviously it was free. But she did. Earlier this week, a piece of mock turtle showed up in my mailbox. And here is mock turtle. It's kind of a, it's a 28 count Lugana. It's kind of a blue-green shade. In this light in my house, it looks kind of gray, but it's really not. And the other thing I picked up on the freebie table at StitchCon was an owl forest pattern. It's this one with the octopus. And I'm thinking that this fabric might just work. I'll have to check. Whoever put it on the freebie table, thank you. They also left the flosses. So I'll have to see if I have enough of those flosses and how they show up on that fabric. Might need to do a few swaps. But since it's all kind of Quaker themed and not real, it's not like it's a Mira or a Teresa Wentzler where the color is critical. I think it would be easy enough to swap a few colors for a little different shade. Yeah, so I have that. And as I was cleaning up my table, because as you may have noticed, I've reoriented my stitching area, my filming area here. I'm trying to get better lighting, and this seemed like the best way to do it. This big black pole behind me here is actually my daylight, which is now over my head instead of coming at me from the side. I've got a window over here that obviously you can't see. I've also got a window behind me, which could be useful on, days when the time is different. So hopefully I've got some of my lighting issues fixed. And anyway, in the process of cleaning off this table, while I was trying to get everything set up here, I found some more stash that I really need to get to. And it is this sampler. It's another, see, I told you I love Forget-Me-Nots. This is Forget-Me-Not by Victorian Motto Sampler Shop. And it's charted for DMC, and I have some DMC and some hand-dyed flosses in there. I swapped a few out. So I feel like I need to start that, partly because what I found is what I bought to put it in, which is this absolutely gorgeous project bag from, I believe it's Antique Owl Lady, possibly. I'll have to check. She's on Instagram. And I bought this on Etsy. I will link it in the video description when I find it. Her stuff, she posts it on Instagram, and then it goes in her Etsy shop, and then it sells like that. So I just think this is gorgeous. I love the way Unlock Your Dreams shows up right in the center. Excuse me. And on the inside is egg fabric, and just the little birds. Butterflies. I love it. I believe it's Susan Wingate fabric. Not positive, but I don't care. I love it. And I think that the Forget-Me-Not would be perfect in it. I'm not one of those people who does themed project bags for every project, but when the opportunity arises, one must take advantage, right? So right now I've talked over your lunch break. I warned you I might, and I'm sorry if I have. I hope you enjoyed seeing what I've been up to and checking out my stash. I'll put some links to some of the shops I've been to and stuff I've talked about in the description, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you're up to too, and hopefully I'll see you in another week or so. Bye.